The sterile lights of the intensive care unit hummed with a cold, clinical indifference, but for Nurse Destiny Davis, the room felt like it was closing in. Her royal blue scrubs were stained with the blood of the John Doe she had spent the last 3 hours keeping alive, her hands still trembling from the adrenaline. Dr. Robert Clark didn't even look at the stabilized patient monitors as he pointed a sharp, accusatory finger at her chest. "You are a liability this hospital is done carrying," he spat, his voice echoing through the glass-walled room. "You broke protocol for a street vagrant. Hand over your badge, Destiny. You're fired, disgraced, and I'll personally make sure you never work in medicine again." Destiny's hand flew to her chest, her deep brown eyes welling with disbelief and the exhaustion of a double shift. "Doctor," Clark sneered, satisfied with his cruel display of authority. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have imagined, was that the heart monitor behind him had picked up a steady, powerful rhythm. The man in the bed, his hospital gown falling open to reveal a vivid dragon-breathing fire tattooed across his chest, opened his dark, intense eyes. Lim Sang-hoon was awake. To Dr. Clark, Destiny was a scapegoat. To the Korean mafia boss, she was the savior who was about to become the reason he burned the hospital to the ground. Hello, family. Welcome back to Afro Soul Mafia Stories. Before we proceed to the story, I would love to know where you are watching from. Kindly drop it in the comment section and also subscribe to this channel. Now, let's continue with the story. 2 heavy-handed security guards grabbed Destiny by her arms. They marched her out of the intensive care unit like a common criminal. The royal blue scrubs she wore with pride now felt like a heavy costume. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she looked back one last time. Dr. Robert Clark stood in the center of the room, adjusting his crisp white coat. A cruel, mocking smile stretched across his face. "Save your tears, Destiny," he called out, loud enough for the other nurses to hear. "Crying won't get your medical license back. You chose to waste your time on a bleeding street rat instead of following my direct orders. Now you will pay the price." Destiny swallowed the hard lump in her throat. She had worked for years to earn her place in this hospital. She had skipped meals and lost sleep to help people. Now her entire future was gone because she refused to let a man die. She held her head high, refusing to let him see her break. The sterile hospital room grew deadly quiet after Destiny was dragged away. In the hospital bed, Lim Sang-hoon slowly opened his dark, intense eyes. He was not a helpless street rat. He was the most feared mafia boss in the city. Despite the agonizing pain radiating from his fresh wounds, his mind was perfectly sharp. He lay perfectly still, breathing softly as he assessed the brightly lit room. His cold gaze locked onto Dr. Robert Clark. Sang-hoon watched the arrogant doctor laugh with another nurse, completely unaware of the deadly mistake he had just made. Sang-hoon memorized every line and wrinkle on Dr. Clark's face. He memorized the sound of the doctor's proud, booming voice. This was the man who had just destroyed the life of the only person who showed him mercy. The hospital gown slipped down, revealing the fierce, fire-breathing dragon tattoo spreading across his muscular chest. Gritting his teeth against the burning pain, Sang-hoon ripped the IV needles from his arm. He forced his body to sit up. It was time to hunt. The freezing rain hit Destiny like tiny daggers as she stepped out of the sliding glass doors of the hospital. She had no umbrella and no thick jacket to protect her from the bitter wind. She walked slowly toward the lonely bus stop at the edge of the street. In her shaking hands, she carried a small brown cardboard box. It held everything she had left: her stethoscope, a few pens, and a framed photo from her nursing school graduation. The cold soaked through her thin blue scrubs, making her shiver uncontrollably. Cars drove past, splashing dirty gray water against her legs. But she barely even noticed the mess. Her mind was trapped in a dark, spinning panic. Without her hospital job, she could not pay her rent next week. Without her medical license, her entire career was completely over. She sat down on the wet metal bench and pulled the damp cardboard box tightly to her chest. A single tear rolled down her cheek, blending with the cold rain. The heavy rain poured down in a massive sheet of gray water, making it hard to see down the empty street. Suddenly, two bright headlights pierced through the dark storm. A massive, shining black Rolls-Royce glided smoothly up to the curb. It did not come alone. 4 heavy black SUVs quickly surrounded the lonely bus stop, completely blocking the street. The vehicles idled like giant, silent predators waiting in the storm. Destiny stopped crying and wiped her wet face, staring at the luxury cars in pure shock. The heavy doors of the SUVs opened all at once. Tall, dangerous-looking men in sharp black suits stepped out into the freezing downpour. They did not even flinch as the rain soaked their expensive clothes. They formed a tight, protective wall around the Rolls-Royce. The rear door of the Rolls-Royce slowly swung open. A heavy cloud of warm air rushed out into the bitter cold. Destiny held her breath, wondering what kind of powerful monster was inside. A tall man with a dark umbrella stepped forward to cover the open car door. Destiny clutched her damp cardboard box, her heart beating wildly in her chest. From the shadows of the luxurious back seat, a man leaned forward. It was the patient she had just saved. Lim Sang-hoon was no longer wearing a flimsy hospital gown. He had a heavy, dark wool coat draped over his broad shoulders, hiding his fresh bandages. His face was slightly pale from the blood loss, but his dark eyes were full of fierce power and deep respect. He reached a strong hand out toward her. "You saved my life," Sang-hoon said. His deep voice easily cut through the loud noise of the heavy rain. "That hospital threw you away like trash, but I do not forget a debt, Destiny." He did not wait for her to argue. Sang-hoon firmly grabbed her freezing hand and pulled her out of the bitter storm. He brought her into the perfect, glowing warmth of the Rolls-Royce, leaving her old, broken life far behind. The black Rolls-Royce smoothly climbed the winding, dark mountain road, leaving the loud city far behind. Maid Destiny stared out the tinted window, her wet scrubs clinging to her freezing skin. Soon, giant iron gates slowly opened, revealing a breathtaking modern mansion hidden in the hills. The massive stone house glowed with warm, golden light against the stormy night sky. Tall guards in sharp suits stood at every corner, their watchful eyes scanning the dark woods. This was not just a rich man's house. It was a high-tech fortress. The luxury cars parked in a wide circle near the grand entrance. When the car door opened, the bitter wind was completely blocked by the massive stone walls of the estate. Destiny held her damp cardboard box tightly, her eyes wide with total shock. She had just lost her tiny apartment and her hard-earned career. Now she was standing inside the most secure and expensive place she had ever seen. Almost she finally felt totally safe. The heavy oak doors of the mansion opened into a grand, glowing hallway. Sang-hoon gave a sharp nod to his waiting staff. Immediately, kind older women gently took the wet cardboard box from Destiny's shaking hands. They led her into a massive, beautiful bathroom filled with warm steam and the sweet smell of lavender. Destiny sank into the hot, bubbling water, letting the freezing rain and the bitter memories wash away. When she finally stepped out, the deep exhaustion in her bones started to fade. The staff wrapped her in a thick, fluffy white robe that felt like a warm hug. They brought her a silver tray loaded with hot soup, fresh bread, and rich tea. For the very first time in years, Destiny did not have to serve anyone else. She was the one being cared for. She ate the delicious food slowly, feeling a new kind of peace. The terrible hospital and Dr. Clark's cruel voice felt like a distant, fading, bad dream. Later that evening, Destiny walked into a huge guest bedroom. The soft bed was covered in expensive silk sheets. Next to the bed, a rack of beautiful designer dresses and soft sweaters waited for her. Sang-hoon had bought her a completely new wardrobe to replace her ruined scrubs. She put on a soft cream sweater, feeling like a brand new person. A quiet knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Sang-hoon walked in, looking pale and tired. He slowly removed his heavy, dark coat, showing the thick white bandages wrapped tightly around his chest. Destiny's training instantly kicked in. She quickly rushed to his side, carefully checking the medical tape and his healing skin. Sang-hoon looked down at her gentle hands, while his dark eyes filled with a rare, quiet softness. He was a dangerous mafia boss, but right now, he completely trusted her. As she gently fixed a loose bandage over his dragon tattoo, a powerful, unspoken bond grew deeply between them in the quiet room. The next morning, Destiny found Sang-hoon sitting at a massive glass desk in his quiet office. Two tall men in black suits stood firmly beside him. They placed a thick, heavy black folder onto the shiny desk. Sang-hoon opened it and pointed to the neat stacks of paper inside. "This is Dr. Robert Clark," Sang-hoon said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. Destiny looked closely at the bright screen on the desk. The files showed years of terrible secrets. The arrogant head doctor had been stealing millions of dollars from the hospital. He also lied about his medical mistakes, blaming innocent nurses like Destiny to protect his own fake reputation. Destiny felt a sharp burn of anger in her chest. Dr. Clark had acted like a perfect hero while secretly ruining lives and stealing money. The men in suits stood silently, waiting for their boss to give the final order. Destiny finally saw the ugly, greedy truth behind the man who had cruelly kicked her out. Sang-hoon looked up from the glowing screen and saw the deep pain in Destiny's brown eyes. He closed the heavy folder with a loud, sharp snap. The sound echoed through the large, quiet office like a sudden gunshot. He stood up slowly, his tall frame casting a long, dark shadow across the polished floor. "Dr. Clark thought you were weak because you were kind," Sang-hoon said softly, walking over to her. He reached out and gently rested his warm hand on her shoulder. "He humiliated you in front of the whole hospital. He tried to destroy your future to hide his own dirty crimes." Sang-hoon's dark eyes burned with a cold, terrifying fire. He was no longer just a patient. He was a deadly king ready for war. "I promise you, Destiny," he whispered, his deep voice shaking the quiet room. "Before the sun sets tomorrow, Robert Clark will lose everything. He will feel the exact same cold humiliation that he forced you to feel." On Monday morning, Dr. Robert Clark walked through the bright glass doors of the hospital. He wore a brand-new, expensive suit under his perfectly clean white coat. He carried his coffee with his usual proud, arrogant smile. He walked straight up to the private elevator reserved only for the top doctors. Without even looking, he tapped his shiny keycard against the electronic scanner. A harsh, angry red light flashed with a loud beep. Frowning, he tapped the plastic card again. The red light flashed a second time. "Is this thing broken?" he muttered under his breath. He aggressively swiped the card a third time, but the heavy metal doors stayed completely shut. Suddenly, two large security guards stepped right in front of him. They were the exact same guards he had used to throw Destiny out into the cold rain just a few days ago. The guards did not smile at him. "Dr. Clark," one guard said coldly, "your access is totally blocked. The hospital board needs to see you right now." Dr. Clark angrily pushed past the security guards and marched straight into the grand boardroom. The entire hospital medical board was sitting silently around the huge wooden table. They did not look happy to see him. The hospital director pointed a shaking finger at a massive screen on the wall. Dr. Clark felt his stomach drop instantly. The glowing screen displayed highly secret bank records. Every single stolen dollar, every fake medical bill, and all of his illegal offshore accounts were shown clearly in bright letters. An unknown hacker had easily broken into his private files during the stormy weekend. The mysterious phantom left absolutely no digital fingerprints behind. They sent all of his terrible, greedy crimes straight to the police and the medical board. "This is completely fake! Someone is framing me!" Dr. Clark yelled, his face turning pale and sweaty. The director simply shook his head in total disgust. "The police have already confirmed the numbers, Robert. Your career is completely over." The hospital security guards grabbed Dr. Clark by his arms, gripping him tightly. They marched the sweating, panicking doctor out of the quiet boardroom and straight into the busy main hallway. It was the exact same hallway where he had proudly humiliated Destiny. Nurses, junior doctors, and hospital workers all stopped to stare at him. The people he used to bully were now watching his total downfall. The hospital director followed closely behind. "Robert Clark, you are officially fired for massive fraud and dangerous medical crimes," the director announced loudly. He reached out and forcefully ripped the whitehead doctor's coat right off Clark's shaking shoulders. Dr. Clark gasped, trying to cover his face with his trembling hands. The proud, arrogant man was completely gone. In front of the entire hospital staff, he looked small, weak, and pathetic. They pushed him toward the sliding glass doors. The other nurses did not feel sorry for him at all. They only watched in silent, cold satisfaction as the worst bully was finally thrown out into the street. Dr. Clark stumbled out of the hospital and pulled out his phone, his hands shaking wildly. He desperately tried to call his private bank to move his stolen money. A robotic voice told him that his accounts were totally frozen. He practically ran down the street to the private parking garage, but his shiny silver sports car was already gone. A large tow truck was driving away with it. Panicking, he finally took a cheap taxi back to his massive, expensive mansion in the rich part of the city. When he arrived, his heart completely stopped. The gates were locked tight with thick, heavy chains. Large, frightening men in black suits were busy carrying his expensive furniture and artwork out the front door. A tall man walked up and handed the crying doctor a piece of paper. Unknown shell companies had quickly bought all of his heavy debts and immediately foreclosed on the giant house. In just a few hours, the greedy doctor had lost his job, his money, and his home. Miles away in the warm, safe fortress in the hills, Destiny sat beside Sang-hoon in his dark office. She watched the glowing computer screens in total silence. The live cameras showed Dr. Clark crying on the sidewalk in front of his locked mansion. Just a few days ago, that same man had the power to ruin her entire life with a single word. Now, he was absolutely nothing. Sang-hoon leaned back in his leather chair, watching Destiny's face very closely. He waited to see if she would feel sorry for the broken doctor. Instead, a new, strange feeling bloomed inside her chest. The heavy, dark fear she had carried for years slowly melted away completely. Destiny sat up taller, her brown eyes shining with a calm, quiet strength. She finally realized that bad people only had power if you let them. With the dangerous mafia boss sitting right beside her, she stopped feeling like a scared nurse. For the first time in her life, Destiny Davis finally felt untouchable. The grand dining room was completely quiet, except for the soft crackle of the warm fireplace. Destiny walked in wearing a stunning dark red dress that the staff had left on her bed. Sang-hoon was already waiting at the long, polished table. He wore a crisp black shirt, looking handsome and powerful in the dim light. Instead of sitting at the far end of the giant table like a distant boss, he pulled out the chair right next to him. Destiny hesitated for a second. She was used to standing in the background while important men ignored her. "Sit with me, Destiny," Sang-hoon said, his deep voice smooth and gentle. He did not order her around or treat her like a simple nurse. He poured her a glass of sparkling water himself. As they ate the delicious meal together, the heavy tension in the air slowly turned into a thrilling electric connection. For the very first time, Destiny realized she was not just his guest, she was his equal. Later that night, Destiny stood by the large glass window looking out at the dark hills. Even though Dr. Clark was an evil bully, a small wave of heavy guilt washed over her gentle heart. He had lost absolutely everything in a single day. Sang-hoon quietly walked up behind her, easily noticing her deep sadness. "You feel sorry for the man who tried to destroy you," he said softly. Destiny sighed and crossed her arms. "I became a nurse to help heal people, not to completely ruin them," she whispered. Sang-hoon reached out and gently turned her to face him. His dark eyes were very serious. "Goodness is a beautiful thing, Destiny, but in this dark world, pure goodness can also become a dangerous weakness," he explained calmly. "If you let a poisonous snake live, it will only bite you again tomorrow. Dr. Clark was a deadly snake. You must learn to be ruthless to protect your own light." Destiny listened closely, slowly understanding his harsh, protective truth. The next afternoon, Dr. Clark walked into the rich, exclusive country club, hoping to find some help. He wore a wrinkled suit and looked incredibly tired. The club was filled with wealthy doctors, successful lawyers, and powerful politicians. These were the exact same people who used to laugh at his terrible jokes and praise his hospital work. But today, the bright, cheerful room suddenly went completely quiet. Every single person turned away from him. When he tried to sit at his usual table, his old friends quickly stood up and walked away in disgust. His massive crimes and horrible fraud were plastered all over the morning news. No one wanted to be seen with a disgraced, broken thief. Dr. Clark frantically reached out to grab a fellow doctor's arm, begging for a tiny loan. The man yanked his arm back and gave him a look of pure hatred. Dr. Clark was officially exiled. The elite high society had completely locked their shiny doors against him forever. Sang-hoon invited Destiny to ride with him into the busy city. The dark Rolls-Royce parked in front of a stunning, newly built private hospital. The building was wrapped in beautiful glass and looked incredibly modern. Destiny looked up at the huge structure in total awe. "Who does this amazing place belong to?" she asked softly. Sang-hoon gave her a very warm, proud smile. He handed her a shiny golden key and a thick leather folder. "It belongs to you," he stated firmly. Destiny gasped, opening the heavy folder. The official legal papers clearly listed her as the primary owner and the new chief director of the hospital. "Oh, you are an incredibly brilliant healer, Destiny. You should never be treated like a servant again," Sang-hoon explained. The amazing status swap was finally complete. The young black nurse who was cruelly fired just a week ago was now the ultimate boss. She held the golden key tightly, feeling a massive surge of pure, unstoppable joy. While Destiny celebrated her amazing new hospital, a dark shadow was creeping toward them. Miles away from the safe, glowing mansion, a dangerous group of men gathered in a hidden warehouse. They were the deadly Triad members, the brutal rival gang that originally put Sang-hoon in the hospital. Their cruel leader stood in front of a large computer screen, his face twisted in pure anger. The screen showed a blurry photograph of the Rolls-Royce parked quietly in the hills. They had successfully tracked the Mafia boss to his secret fortress. One of the men stepped out of the dark shadows. He tossed a thick pile of dirty cash onto the metal table. "The corrupt doctor gave us the exact location before he lost his money," the evil man sneered. The rival leader pulled a heavy, loaded gun from his dark jacket. He smiled a wicked, terrifying smile. Sang-hoon and Destiny thought they were totally safe, but a massive storm of violence was rushing straight toward their door. Destiny stood on the wide balcony, staring out at the beautiful, dark mountains. The cool night air brushed against her skin. Sang-hoon stepped outside and stood close beside her. He did not say a word, but his strong presence made her feel entirely safe. Slowly, he reached out and took her hand. His warm fingers gently traced the soft lines of her palm. Destiny looked up into his deep, dark eyes. She finally understood that his dangerous world was now her world, too. She was no longer just a scared nurse running from a cruel boss. She was the brave woman who had saved a powerful king. When Sang-hoon leaned down and softly kissed her forehead, a warm, electric thrill rushed through her whole body. She closed her eyes and leaned against his chest, listening to the strong, steady beat of his heart. For the very first time in her long, hard life, Destiny knew exactly where she belonged. She fully accepted his love and his dangerous, hidden life. The peaceful moment on the balcony was suddenly shattered by a loud, frantic knock. Sang-hoon's top enforcer rushed into the room, holding a glowing tablet. His face was pale with absolute terror. "Boss, we just intercepted a hidden phone call," the enforcer said, his voice shaking. Sang-hoon grabbed the tablet and played the secret audio file. Destiny gasped as she heard Dr. Clark's greedy voice filling the room. The terrible truth finally came out. Dr. Clark did not just ignore Sang-hoon in the emergency room by accident. The brutal rival triad gang had secretly bribed the corrupt doctor with $5 million to let Sang-hoon bleed to death on the hospital table. When Destiny saved him, she ruined their massive, deadly plan. But the worst part was still playing on the recording. Dr. Clark, desperate for money after losing everything, had just given the dangerous triad the exact location of the hidden mountain mansion. The hidden enemy was no longer a secret. They knew exactly where to strike. Before Sang-hoon could even drop the tablet, the bright lights inside the massive mansion completely flickered and died. The entire estate was plunged into freezing, terrifying darkness. A second later, the loud, screaming wail of the emergency security alarms echoed through the long halls. Bright, flashing red lights spun wildly along the walls, signaling a code black. The deadly triad had finally arrived. Outside the heavy glass windows, Destiny saw dark shadows moving quickly across the beautiful lawn. The sound of heavy boots and breaking glass crashed from the lower floors. Sang-hoon's men instantly started yelling orders, pulling out their heavy weapons to defend the house. Sang-hoon turned to Destiny, his face turning as cold and hard as solid stone. He quickly pulled a shiny silver gun from his dark coat. "Stay right behind me," he ordered fiercely. The peaceful, romantic night was instantly gone, replaced by a brutal, terrifying war. The hidden fortress was fully under attack, and there was absolutely no way out. The heavy oak doors of the master bedroom suddenly burst open. 3 masked attackers rushed inside, firing their weapons blindly into the dark room. Sang-hoon moved like a dangerous shadow, pushing Destiny safely behind a thick marble wall. He fired back with perfect, deadly aim, taking down 2 of the violent men instantly. But as he violently twisted his body to fight the third attacker, a terrible, tearing sound ripped through his chest. The fresh medical stitches holding his deep wounds together completely popped open. Sang-hoon let out a painful groan and dropped heavily to his knees. Bright red blood quickly soaked through his crisp black shirt, staining his fierce dragon tattoo. He managed to shoot the final attacker, but his weapon slipped from his shaking hand. His breathing became incredibly shallow and weak. The powerful mafia boss was losing too much blood, and his body was shutting down fast. Destiny watched in pure horror as the strongest man she knew slowly collapsed onto the cold floor. Sang-hoon weakly pushed Destiny toward the secret escape door. "Run!" he whispered, coughing up blood. "Save yourself!" But Destiny Davis did not move a single inch. She was a highly trained emergency nurse, and she refused to let her patient die twice. She quickly ripped open the emergency medical kit hidden in the large bathroom. Or her hands stopped shaking as her professional training fully took over. She grabbed thick bandages, strong medical tape, and a sharp needle. Crawling across the floor while gunshots echoed downstairs, she reached his side. She pressed her hands hard against his bleeding chest, stopping the heavy blood flow with all her strength. "I am not leaving you," she yelled over the loud alarms. She rapidly stitched his torn skin right there on the floor, using her own body to shield him from the open doorway. Destiny was no longer just a sweet, quiet girl. She was fighting a brutal war to save the man she loved, and she would never surrender. Destiny knew she could not fight the armed men with her bare hands, but her brilliant brain was her best weapon. Once she quickly dragged Sang-hoon into the mansion's private medical bay and locked the heavy metal door. Outside, the attackers began to aggressively smash the lock. Destiny scanned the shelves filled with strong cleaning supplies and medical chemicals. Her mind raced back to her tough college chemistry classes. She grabbed 2 different plastic bottles containing bleach and rubbing alcohol. She knew mixing them would create a highly toxic, blinding gas. She poured the clear liquids into a glass jar and soaked a towel in water to cover Sang-hoon's face. "Do not breathe," she ordered softly. As the metal door finally burst open, Destiny threw the bubbling jar straight at the men. Thick, burning white smoke exploded in the small hallway. The attackers instantly dropped their heavy guns, screaming in absolute pain as the strong chemical gas blinded their eyes. Destiny's quick thinking had just turned the tide of the deadly war. The thick chemical smoke filled the hallway, causing absolute chaos. The rival attackers stumbled around blindly, coughing and rubbing their burning eyes. Sang-hoon leaned heavily against the wall, fighting through the terrible pain in his chest. His vision was blurry from blood loss, but he still gripped his silver gun tightly. Destiny stayed crouched low on the floor, watching the smoke clear just enough to see the dark shadows. She spotted the cruel triad leader stepping through the white cloud, aiming his weapon blindly. 3 steps to your left, boss, Destiny whispered into Sang-hoon's ear, her voice perfectly calm and steady. Sang-hoon trusted her completely. He did not hesitate. He shifted his weight exactly 3 steps to the left and raised his gun. He pulled the trigger twice in the dark. The loud shots echoed like thunder. The rival leader dropped to the floor instantly, his deadly threat ended forever. Guided by the brave nurse, the powerful dragon had struck down his greatest enemy. They had finally won. The first bright rays of morning sunlight finally broke through the dark, smoky windows of the mountain mansion. The terrifying siege was officially over. Sang-hoon's loyal men had completely secured the large estate, capturing the remaining blinded attackers. The beautiful house was totally wrecked, with broken glass and bullet holes everywhere, but they had survived the impossible night. Destiny sat on the edge of a clean sofa, breathing heavily. She looked down at her clothes. Her soft sweater and the medical scrubs underneath were covered in dark red blood once again. Just a week ago, the blood on her clothes got her fired and publicly disgraced. Today, that exact same blood proved that she was an unstoppable survivor. She had saved the mafia boss twice, using only her brilliant mind and pure courage. Sang-hoon slowly walked over and sat beside her. He did not look at her like a scared nurse anymore. He looked at her with total awe and deep, unbreakable respect. Later that afternoon, a black SUV pulled up to the front steps of the ruined mansion. 2 large guards dragged a filthy, crying man out of the back seat and threw him onto the hard stone floor. It was Dr. Robert Clark. The once proud, arrogant head doctor looked absolutely pathetic. His expensive clothes were torn, and his face was pale with pure terror. He knew the deadly triad gang had failed to kill Sang-hoon, which meant his own life was now over. Sang-hoon stood tall, his hand resting near his gun, ready to end the doctor's life. But Destiny gently touched his arm, stepping forward to handle it herself. Dr. Clark looked up and saw the young black nurse he had cruelly fired. He instantly started sobbing, crawling toward her expensive leather boots. "Destiny, please," he begged loudly, his voice cracking with fear. "I was wrong. Please have mercy. Do not let him kill me." He was nothing but a broken beggar at her feet. Destiny looked down at the crying, pathetic man who had once destroyed her entire career without a single second thought. She felt the heavy weight of her ultimate power. One word from her, and Sang-hoon would erase him forever. But Destiny chose a much colder punishment. "I will not kill you, Robert," she said, her voice perfectly steady and icy. "Death is too easy. I want you to live." She stared straight into his terrified eyes. "I want you to live in the freezing cold streets, completely penniless, with no medical license and no friends. I want you to remember my face every single time you beg for a meal." She ordered the guards to throw him outside the giant iron gates with absolutely nothing. As the ruined doctor was dragged away screaming, Destiny turned her back on him forever. She looked at Sang-hoon, who smiled with deep pride. She took his strong hand, officially stepping into her new, untouchable life as the true queen of the empire. True power isn't about how loud you can shout or who you can destroy. It is about having the courage to heal in a world that tries to break you and the strength to claim your crown when the smoke finally clears. Lessons learned from this story. Kindness is never a weakness. Destiny's choice to do the right thing and save a life, even when she was threatened by her arrogant boss, ultimately rewarded her with absolute power and an empire. Never underestimate the underdog. Dr. Clark thought Destiny was nothing but a helpless scapegoat. He failed to realize that her brilliant mind, professional training, and pure courage would be the exact weapons needed to turn the tide of a deadly war. True justice is poetic. You don't always need violence to win. Destiny proved that stripping a corrupt bully of his wealth, medical license, and dignity is a much colder and more profound punishment than simply ending his life. If Destiny's incredible journey from a disgraced nurse to an unstoppable queen inspired you, please like this video and share it with someone who needs a reminder of their own inner strength. What was your favorite moment or chapter in Destiny and Sang-hoon's story? Let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss another thrilling Afro Soul Mafia story. Thanks for watching!